Robert asked me to start the discussion of this in a place that I think is just great for a dyslexic like myself, to start with the end of my book called Growing Yourself Back Up. And the last chapter in Growing Yourself Back Up is called The Grace in Regression. And then I'm going to sort of work back, but I want to say that regression is a gift from God. It's an attempt to heal the trauma, the hurt, the slight, the wound, the hurtful touch, the hurtful glance, the deadly touch, the deadly glance. And that God set this up as a way to say, we're going to give you 10 million ways to heal. And a story is going to be one, a poem is going to be one, and the potatoes that we pull out of the ground and songs are going to be one, and movement's going to be one, and all the different names of God is going to be one. So what I mean by grace is just that you're going to run into people, places, and things all the time that if we're going to regress, it's going to regress you. One of the reasons why I write the material is because in the gift of grace, which affords us the opportunities and the times to heal our hurts, that we can not stop or cease regression, but we can minimize it, catch it, and I'm going to teach you how today to minimize regression and to catch it so that the healing can be accentuated and the damage can be diminished. Even though there is grace in regression, when it's not caught and when it's allowed to run rampant like it is in our country right now, very often regression equals regret. We say things that we didn't mean. We do things that we didn't really want to do. We acted in ways that we really didn't want to act. And we bomb people that we shouldn't be bombing. So let me just give you a definition of regression for those who would rather have a fertile definition. And that is feeling small, feeling little, or feeling less than. Regression is simply a psychoanalytic term. Freud used it. The self-psychologists like Kohut, Mahler, Wolf, they use it, but they've never explained it to us in a way that was useful. They used it all the time, but they wouldn't explain it in a way that's useful. So it means feeling small, feeling little, feeling less than. 1 minute, I'm 50 years old, and you say something to me and I'm 5. It's so common. It happens every day. 1 minute, you and your wife are making love, or you and your lover are making love, and a little part of the body gets turned a certain way, and you feel like you're 16 again. Not in a good way either. Uh-huh.
Lately, I do a lot of talking, and my wife and I do a lot of talking, and I've been aware that at certain moments my voice changes and becomes very rough. And if she asks me, why is Tennyson not as good a poet as John Ransom or something, my voice will be fine, sweet, and I'll answer the question, and it'll be thoughtful and courteous, etc. If she says to me, like, the one downstairs, is that a 3-pronged hole or a 2-pronged hole? Something I should know as a man. Suddenly, without my being aware of it, I really regress and I feel little, and my voice changes to try to scare her off. And it's ugly. That little voice that comes out there is ugly. And I'm amazed I must do that like 20 times a day. And I'm trying to catch that before.
Catch it. That's the word. It's not going to ever stop entirely, but catch it. And when you're talking like this, and she says something about something you don't know, and you I tend to take either two directions. I either go, I don't know, or I go, how the fuck would I know? One or the other. But neither one of them are me. The adult me. So what I want to suggest here, the first part is to surrender to the idea that we all regress. Some of us regress more than others. Some regress at certain times more than others, less at others, depending on a lot of factors, and some of which I'll cover today. What factors increase regression and what factors decrease the likelihood of regression. But surrender to the fact that when you get nervous in the stomach, real butterflies at the thought of coming up and talking to Robert, that is not only normal, but it's a regression. It's a regression. You're feeling small, you're feeling less than, or you're feeling little. And that he's the big man and the big guy. Of course, one of the reasons why I've taught this material for so many years with the gusto that I've tried to teach it is that if you can understand that you're regressing, then you probably can understand that we're regressing and develop more compassion for each other. You know, that's why the grace in regression is not only to heal the traumas, but perhaps to extend more compassion to each other. Sometimes on a good day, now listen to my words.
You're saying that if you regress, you have no compassion.
If I'm regressed, if I know I'm regressed and how predominant regression is, then I may guess that you're regressing too. And therefore I might be able to extend more compassion to myself and to you at that moment. But if you're in a full-blown regression, you're not compassionate with yourself or anyone else, which is what our country is in now, a full-blown regression. Can't catch it, we missed it. Too late, now we got to go through the hard part of growing ourselves back up, which will take another 1,000 or 2,000 years. But it happens in individual relationships. Years ago, Robert and I talked a lot about this. When he was working on the book, The Sibling Society, he dealt with regression in a cultural and societal sense. I tried to deal with regression in a personal and individual and relational sense. Nobody wants to hear about it because we're too regressed as a culture and as a person to read such books. You know, about the only people that can read such books is people who have caught their regression enough to say, yes, I am societally regressed and individually regressed. I need to read more, please. You follow that? So what I wanted to say now is that, you know, if we yield to this and surrender to this notion of regression, we not only extend compassion, but maybe some empathy, and even maybe perhaps some forgiveness. So let's look for a minute at what makes us regress, what tends to make us regress more, and see if we can get at that a little bit. Here's the simple way of saying it. We regress usually when we get too much of something or too little of something. Now you fill in the blanks. Too much attention for some folks. They go into a feeling of being small. I could ask 4 or 5 of you to come up and read a poem who have never read in public before, and we'd have to attach a baby monitor to your ass between there and here just to monitor your vital signs, because it would scare you to death like it does some of us, you know. Too much touch, and we go into a feeling of smallness or littleness. Too much tenderness, too much food, too much appreciation, too much applause, too much sex, too much Haagen-Dazs, if you can believe it.
Too much, I can feel it sometimes. My wife is being very tender with me. I freeze.
Right.
Is that a regression?
Exactly. Too much tenderness for men who have been hardened for a long, long time against the rough, not the tender. You know.
The man has been conditioned so long to fight. Right. What did you say? The roughness.
To deal with the roughness of the world. I mean, we have studies who have undeniably shown that when children are in maternity wards and when a girl child cries, the timer goes, and the response is 1/2 the time that when a boy child is in distress. And all the nurses and the hospital people will say, that's just not so. I respond equally well, and then they show them the videotapes. So we've been conditioned to experience roughness, and so when we have too much tenderness, sometimes we go into regression. There's other men in here when they don't have enough, they go into regression. Too much or too little. See, and this is the incredible mystical thing about regression, is what may regress you may not regress me at all. What may regress your wife or your lover may not affect you at all, you know. And that's why we say things like, you're just too damn sensitive. Why are you so damn sensitive about this? I'm not, because this doesn't regress me, right? Now, you not reading my poem correctly, there's a reason for regression, you know. So too much or too little. So rather than me giving them to you, would you please give them to me? If you get too much what, you tend to feel powerless less than, small, or little. If you get too much what? Criticism, absolutely, boy. Attention, too much. Keep going with the too much first. Too much help. Advice. Money. Yeah, hell yeah. Silence. Too much silence. How old do you feel when you get too much silence? Little bitty? Like maybe 2 or 3, huh? It's too much what? What? Demanding. When somebody puts too much demand on you, how old do you feel? About 7. Somebody over here. When you get too much teasing, how old do you feel? Little. See the word little. That's all regression is. It's little. That's the lay way of talking about I feel little. I felt 50 and then I felt 5. You know, you go home for Christmas, you got credit cards and mortgage and a Lexus. You go through the door, the credit cards disappear, the Lexus turns into a little 3-wheeler, and if you don't get out of there before dinner, you're not going to be old enough to have a driver's license, right? What? Too much. Too much question. What are you doing? What time did you say you'd be home? Who have you been with? You know, when are you going to stop this shit? Right? Too little. You get too little and you start feeling small or little.
There was an incident, I shared this with you once before, where a woman left me.
And that'll do it.
I was 55 years old, and there was this overwhelming feeling of abandonment. And there was a deja vu quality to it. And I went
I've
with
been
it.
here before.
I went with it, and I realized, got to the source of how terribly and shabbily I had treated my mother, because she had a nervous breakdown and left us. The moment, and I communicated that to her immediately. I called her up. I was in tears. I acknowledged how insensitive I had been and abusive over the 30 or 40 years. And she said, "You're my son. I love you."
You'll always be my baby.
Okay? But what's remarkable is that I stopped responding to women the way I had the moment I completed that. So what I'm suggesting is that if you go with the regression and you can get back to the cause, you might find completion there.
That's true. That's why I teach this, and that's the grace. You're given an opportunity to heal an old abandonment, an old slight, an old wound. One of the greatest regress lines that a man or woman can say is they're 40 years old and they say, "My husband abandoned me. My wife abandoned me." And I say, you know, adults can't be abandoned. There's no way adults can be abandoned. I'd never say adults can't feel abandoned, but I say adults can't be abandoned. Because I got car keys, I got money to call. I mean, you know, it'd be like saying, well, me and my wife were in the mall yesterday, and she abandoned me. Well, you know, I'm sorry, mister, you're 56 years old, but you can abandon a 4-year-old in the mall. And you can feel abandoned as a 56-year-old, but it's exactly what he's talking about there. God has given you one more opportunity to heal an issue that is much older than your wife leaving you in the mall. It's not always in childhood, but it usually is, or adolescence or childhood. You can go back to your 20s. When the woman that I wrote about in The Flying Boy left me, I just acted like a goddamn 19-year-old for about 2 years, you know. So too much or too little, and what is for you is different than what is for me, and what is for you is even different depending on how you are that day. Now, here's how I caught mine this morning. I was in a terrible regression, not a massive one, but a pretty terrible one, and all I had to do was catch it. And I said, let me tell you about my anxiety. I have been 1/10 as anxious since, whereas 10 years ago, I wouldn't have told you. I would have thought, no, I gotta deal with this, and I gotta get through this, but I had to grow myself back up in order to be here, because that's how I want to be, is grown up for the most part here, not feeling like a 6-year-old who's on stage about to be involved in a spelling bee, you know, or something. So physical cues, then there's emotional cues. Here are some emotional cues that you or I may be going into a regression. Thinking that you know. Thinking that I know is very often a cue that I'm going into an emotional regression. I walk up to you and I say, honey, you look very tired today. You should go to bed and get some rest. Which is code for me saying, I'm an adult and I know what you need and you don't. And we've been taught in this culture that that's a kind thing to say to somebody if you perceive that they are tired. So then there's the emotional psychological cue of what I call stories in your mind. Stories in your mind. You're making up stories as fast as the speed of lightning about what is happening or what's not going to happen. I remember one time I was teaching with these fellas at a Great Mother Conference years ago, and I was very regressed. Every time I go to the Great Mother Conference, I become like 5, with a master's degree, because they all got PhDs, and I only got a master's degree, so I'm 5, But anyway, so I'm always regressed, and one day I go to get something to eat, and I come back, and all the teachers are gone. All of them are gone in a car. And I come back, and my first statement sounded like this. I think I may have said to Craig something like, so where are all the teachers? They're gone. My next statement, somebody else says, do you know where all the teachers have gone? Yeah, I think they got in a car and left for something. And then my story in my mind started going, see? And I'm saying, fuck, they've all got together to convene to figure out how to ask me to leave. They don't like what I'm teaching, and maybe I upset somebody, and and I'm just telling myself stories of what the possibility may be. Your wife says, "I'll be home at 10:15," and she doesn't call or she doesn't get there at 10:15. You don't go into regression because you've had all this psychological help and recovery help. You don't go into a massive regression until 10:20. Right? Thank God for therapy, huh? Time gets funny, elongated or collapsed. When you're making love with a woman, or a lover, or a man, and you're in that first blush, you make love for hours, but it only seemed like a few minutes. And in that first blush, the lover says, honey, I hate to leave now, but I have to go out of town for 3 days. And the regressed one says, 3 days! 3 whole days! That's like 72 hours, Can't you call in sick, right, and stay with me? And then that same couple, 6 years later, the guy says, honey, I got to go out of town for 7 days. She says, take 10. Don't be in a hurry. I got things to do, And then he's gone for 10 days, but it only seems like a day. Right? So, time gets elongated, or it gets, both of them are regressions, by the way. So there's physical signs. There's all kind of red flags in the book that I don't have time to talk about right now, but these are things that they're saying, when you're in this state, don't talk about buying a house together. Me want house. Me want big house, and the woman's going, you know what? When I left this morning, you were full grown. Next time I go to work, I'm going to hire a babysitter,
On a cultural level, because what I see around me, I see monstrous mansions, these McMansions. I see people driving the hugest SUVs imaginable, and I know they're in regression, but I go someplace bleak.
It's very important.
Seeing
it's
that.
Very, very important. 2 facts here. One, thinking that we know anybody is in a regression is demonic almost. Probably are, could be, more than likely. But any time that we're in that kind of a place, it's dangerous. Now, second piece to that. The reason why I've devoted my time and thinking and work to the personal level is out of the personal and relational level grows the societal. And if we focus on the societal without really getting it, you and I are already involved in a demonic overusage of everything that we possibly come in contact with. How dare we, in an adult sense, have a right to condemn those others who are doing it even more obviously than we are? So let me see if I can just tie this up, and then tomorrow I'll give you the 5 things that will grow you back up. When you're in a regression, whether it's with your lover or your boss or your friend or a teacher or whatever, and then I will demonstrate for you a process of this is what I can do before I say something that I could regret. Thank you all very much for this morning.